Community Highlights. Another local exclusive from Southeastern Michigan's news and information station, MonroeCountyRadio.com.
This is our town, the place we call home.
Welcome to This Is Our Town with Jeff Yorkey, a local public affairs presentation on MonroeCountyRadio.com. Brought to you by Allen Chevrolet Cadillac. All roads lead to Chevrolet. Here's Jeff Yorkey.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of This Is Our Town. I'm Jeff Yorkey. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And in our town today, we have Tom Heck, Brian Sabbadini, is it? Did I pronounce that right, Brian?
Right.
Sabbadini? All right, and Darla Myers. Darla, all you guys, thanks for coming on. Now, the reason that this is the reason you guys are all here is you all are running for school board here in Monroe. Is that right?
Correct.
And now I got to ask to begin with, obviously you're all here together. I notice you guys have T-shirts with that you guys are all sort of campaigning together, suggesting that you have sort of you're like-minded in a lot of ways. I can't help but ask what motivated each of you to do it. And I would, it's interesting because we don't usually have any of you ever run for political office before? Any of you?
No.
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 So none of you ever have before. And this is the kind of thing that we're seeing a lot more of lately. We started seeing it in the Commonwealth of Virginia when Mayor Youngkin ran there, or Governor Youngkin won there. And we saw a lot of people in school boards around Virginia that were attracting candidates that had never had any political experience before. But something happened. What happened with you guys that said, hey, I got to do this? Who wants to go first?
Well, this is Darla. I'll go ahead and go first. I didn't plan on being involved with the school board at all. And then my grandson was in the Young Five program within Monroe school system, and he didn't learn anything. Mm-hmm. He wasn't prepared to go to kindergarten. And so I went to the school board, and the very first meeting, they asked me why I was there. And I said, you failed to educate my grandson. I just want to know why. Mm-hmm. And that was a year and a half ago, and I'm still exploring.
Well, let me ask you, what kind of a response did you get from the school board when they asked you that question? Why are you here? And you told them. What did they say?
They congratulated me on opening a school in my basement to educate him, but they were very, very kind. They were very, look, we want to work together, ask us anything. They really did respond to my questions. They educated me on the system a lot. How does it work? But it also opened my eyes to policies that I think are very detrimental and harmful to the children. And I never give up my 3 minutes at the Monroe School Board twice a month because I believe it's important to get information out to the parents and the families in the community of what's happening and what's going on as well. So
you were concerned about the fact that you weren't seeing results. You thought that the school board they were nice. They were mm-hmm. they talked to you. They were interactive. They listened to your concerns. Did you offer up suggestions that they kind of said, nah, or what were the policy problems that you saw that motivated you to do what you're doing?
I always offer up suggestions. I'm a researcher. I love to be educated and I love information. So I'm always looking at researching into the policies that they were doing. They passed a whole bunch of them last year, and the first one I bring up is Policy 8400, and it changed and allows sexual offenders to be now allowed within the school safety zone. And I kept saying, explain it. Just explain why you're doing it. I don't understand why you're changing that policy. It was put in place for the safety of the children. If something has changed, tell us. Let us know why. And they wouldn't give answers. They don't respond to you in a public setting. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you'll get a response in private, but you won't get it in public.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is?
Well, they're very open about that. They said because they can't control what each of them say, mm-hmm. and they may say something that's going to cause them some issues down the road. They did converse with a lawyer on that and said that by the best advice that he had given them, it was best that they not address it with us. I know Tom Bryan and myself completely disagree with that. We believe in open transparency. If I'm going to change a policy, I want you to understand why. I want you to know how I educated myself on that topic and the reasons I gave for doing it.
So, Brian, let me ask you now. You and I have a lot in common. Apparently, you were a political science major back in the day, right?
Yes.
And you've always probably been interested in politics, but this is your first actual foray into the game, right?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So let's take it back a little ways. I'm a graduate of the Monroe Public School System. Went to the University of Michigan. Graduated there in 1991 with a political science degree, as you indicated. So I'm very concerned about the Monroe community, and I really came to this whole thing when COVID hit. I had to work from home for my job, so I would have my daughter on Zoom calls with very little information being transmitted. So I started scratching my head. I'm like, wow, there's something missing here. I don't know what's going on, but there's definitely something missing here. And let's remind everybody, this was a year and a half, okay?
And now, what grade was your daughter in?
My daughter
at that
was,
time?
when COVID hit, she would have been a sophomore.
Okay.
Her junior year, I'll remind everybody, they went 2 days out of the whole year in person, 2 days, which is hard to believe, right?
Right.
So big loss of learning there. But she did get her senior year, which was pretty much full. But I think what happened, and what you're seeing from a lot of people, is kind of COVID drove parents to start figuring what's going on here. I'm missing something. And I like to say, when I graduated from Monroe Public Schools, we put usually 40 to 50 kids in the University of Michigan. And if you're a Spartan fan, that doesn't mean anything, right? Go.
Right.
That's
right.
okay.
Yeah.
But as a barometer, it's a good school. And if you're putting kids from your public school into that university system, you're probably doing a good job of educating them.
Yeah.
And I think we've just seen deterioration over time.
Do you have figures as to how many of them end up at U of M now?
No, I can only go kind of anecdotally.
Right.
They have a college decision day, which I think is an awesome thing that the schools
Yep.
have done. My daughter got to go across the stage with her Concordia University, where she was
Sure.
going, sign. I would say I did not see more than 10. I'm going to guess it was between 5 and 10.
And I would guess, and I can't say this for sure, but Monroe high school is probably bigger than it was when you went to high school there. Would you say?
No, I think my graduating class was 500 or 600.
Okay.
My daughter's was 400, so
Okay.
it's a little
bit
less,
smaller then.
A little bit
Okay.
smaller.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's really what drove my decision to kind of get my hat in the ring. And
What do you think is the reason for that? Why do you think that the level of the quality of education has deteriorated since you went to school?
Well, I think that there has been a movement toward a lot of these soft skill type things.
Okay.
Not the hard math, English, science. It's a lot of these ancillary issues that go on in society, and we could probably name them pretty quickly.
Sure.
But I think there's been a little bit of loss of focus, and I think we've gotten into this kind of, like I said, soft
Yeah.
issue kind of thing where our eyes are off the mark a little bit. And I have an educator in the house. My wife is 18 years at Adrian Public Schools, so I know how educators feel, and I get a pretty good honest assessment of how things are going.
Oh yeah.
And I think that class size is another thing that's driven that. Sometimes you'll get a class size of 30 students, which she had last year, which is ridiculously hard to do.
Right.
This year she has 21, and she comes home every night like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Right.
So I think class size is a big factor. Finding teachers is getting harder and harder. It's becoming more difficult.
Tell me about it. Yep.
So it's going to drive class sizes even higher, I think, unfortunately, which I think is going to be a negative for everybody. So, how do we work together collectively to look at class sizes? I know that, it's a financial consideration, but I think if I were looking at one of the things that's a key component, class size is a big one, because you can't give individualized attention as much as you could when you're at a lower number.
Right.
So
let's move on to Tom. Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself and what prompted you to enter into the. Have you ever done anything like this before?
Actually, no. I'm like Brian. I'm a graduate of Monroe High School. I have an engineering degree from Michigan State and was heavily involved in the automotive industry, which took up all my time on a global basis.
Michigan
But-
State. So now we know why Brian was hedging a little bit
That's
there
right.
before, right?
Yeah, we can get into it a little bit back and forth. But interesting enough, my older brother was on the school board many years ago and tried to convince me several times to run, but unfortunately my job required that I fly all over the world for quite a bit. But part of that job was I saw a lot of the different school systems around the world and the way they handled the children there compared to here. And I continued to see, as I came back, when my kids were in school here as well, my teachers, my wife is a retired school teacher from Monroe. I kept seeing
Monroe Public?
Monroe Public.
Yep.
So I kept seeing the way it kept degrading, the proficiencies in the students. And so eventually, about the same time Brian and Darla started getting involved in the school board, I had looked at some of the state standardized scores, and I saw how bad Monroe Public Schools was trending versus the rest of the state, including, you kind of expect, and I hate to say this, maybe the Detroit public school system would be near the bottom or Flint, but Monroe was right there with them,
Yeah.
which surprised me quite a bit. So I started investigating that more, looking at the M-STEP scores, and I was just amazed at how poorly the students were doing and how poorly we were educating them. I mean, Monroe has some good things like the CTE program where they're
Yeah.
building the houses
Oh, yeah.
and the welding, but those students need the basic skill sets even when they're going into those programs. Just an example, because the M-STEPs for 2022 just came out a couple weeks ago. Waterloo School, proficiency in math was 2.9% of their students. So that says 93% of their students are not proficient in math.
Wow.
And it's kind of endemic across all the schools in the Monroe public system. So being an engineer and math is kind of
Right. That's your baby.
That's my
Yeah.
baby, and I just think there's better ways to teach that. They use so many computerized tools nowadays. They have something called Dreambox, something called iReady, but I think they rely too much on that versus letting the teachers really work with them one-on-one as much as they can with the class sizes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's really what got me involved in all this.
Okay, so that's interesting. So each of you really came into this from a different angle. I was kind of expecting, honestly, when you guys came in that you all had kids that were in similar class, so you were always at the games together. You know what I mean? But it's not that at all. So now I got. Right, I got to ask you now. I mean, the three of you are running together. Clearly, you have similar interests. You have similar ideas. What was it? What was that thing that brought you all together? How'd you guys all meet each other? Who wants to tell me a little bit about that?
Really, it was at the school board meetings.
Okay.
Interesting enough, surprisingly, there's not a lot of parents that go to the school board meetings. So, in many of them, it was just the three of us sitting there.
Really?
And we're the ones, like Darla mentioned, she always used her 3 minutes. And then when I got up the first time to talk about the standardized test scores, then we kind of ran into each other and realized we're all kind of on the same page.
Okay. So,
Yeah, I think what drives all three of us is the notion that I don't think any one of us individually wanted to be the only one on the school board, because we wanted to affect change, right?
Sure.
So the way to affect change is to have better numbers.
Of course,
It's a
right.
7-person board, right?
Right.
So if I have one vote or if I have 3 votes, it's a much different voting block.
Exactly.
So that's really what drove us. I like to say we're unified, but we're not uniform. So there's different things that we all bring to the table. We
Right.
think this is more important than the other. But I think at the core, the number one thing is seeing kids flourish, and that's my number one thing, is to see kids flourish. If they can't read, they can't flourish, right?
Right, right.
That's the basic building block. Can't even get to math or anything else if you can't read.
Right.
So back to state test scores, we're about 20% proficient on reading for third graders. So that's a big problem, because when you keep moving forward and you don't have that basic reading block skill, I think that's one of the things that kind of drove us all together. But Darla she gets her 3 minutes. So Jeff, she told you she
Yeah.
takes 3 minutes at every meeting. So she's going to talk more than Tom and I.
Is that in fact the case, Darla? You're gonna
Yeah.
talk more.
That would be 100% true.
That's what we try to stop her. I had like an agenda, like here's what we're going to do, and that's
And Darla's like, I'll tell you what we're gonna do.
Yep.
Well, you know what? I got a lot more that I want to cover with you guys, but I got to take a quick break. If you don't mind, when we come back, I would like to talk a little bit about maybe some specifics of what you guys would like to do when you get on the board, assuming that you get on the board, and how you hope to accomplish the goals that you've laid out here in the first half of the show. Sound good?
Sounds
Sounds
great.
great.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be back right after this message from my good buddy John Allen over at Allen Chevrolet Cadillac.
When you're looking for a new or used vehicle, you want the best selection to choose from. Allen of Monroe is the largest volume Monroe County dealer with 300 new and used vehicles on their lot. That's way more than the other dealers. Allen Chevrolet of Monroe has been voted the best Monroe County dealer of the year for the past 3 years. When you want the best selection at a great price, there's only one dealer in Monroe County that delivers. Allen of Monroe.
All right, welcome back. And if you are just joining us, I am here today in our town with Tom Heck, Brian Sabbadini, and Darla Myers, and they are running for school board here in Monroe. And if you're just tuning in, the first half of the show, they talked a little bit about what motivated them to get involved. And to a large extent, I think it was the things that they saw during the pandemic. Having attended a lot of the school board meetings, you guys have seen that, hey, you know, Monroe is kind of towards the bottom of the list of schools in Michigan, and you guys want to do something to effectuate a change. So this part of the show, I really want to sort of address with you guys, each of you, what are your what's the main plank here? What do you guys hope to be able to accomplish? What specifics would you like to see happen in order to make the changes necessary to groom some success with the kids here in our community?
Well, I think we have a kind of a three-pronged attack that each one of us will talk about. But I'd first talk about accessibility, right? The school board at the present doesn't seem overly accessible to both parents and the community, and that's something we really would like to change. We want more input, right? So that includes we need to be streaming the meetings. As Tom pointed out, 3 parents come there because parents got a lot to do when they get home from work.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And going to this admin building to see the meeting is one of the last things they want to do.
Right.
So if we can open that up through streaming, which we did during COVID, which we stopped after COVID, maybe putting that on a YouTube channel
Yeah.
or something like that.
With today's technology, that's a
Right.
piece of cake,
So
right?
it's a no-brainer, right? The second thing, is, and I'll give Monroe Public Schools credit for this. They did start a student delegate program, so the students could kind of give their input to the administration on what they were seeing from their perspective. What I like to see is what they call parental advisory boards, which is you get 8 to 10 parents on a board, and every month or every 6 weeks they kind of come in and say, here's the things that we're seeing, the issues that we're struggling with, so we can get that input to start making some changes that the community needs to see. And another thing with accessibility that I lack seeing is the school board members actually going to the school buildings, visiting classrooms, going to sporting events. My daughter played soccer, and she was sideline cheer and competitive cheer, so I saw a lot of football games and a lot of soccer games, and I didn't see a board member at any of those things.
Really?
So I'm not here to cast aspersions, but if you want to be out amongst people, you go to sporting events, right? And they kind of grab your shoulder and say, "Hey, this is what's happening."
Yeah,
You kind of get that feel, right? When you go to the admin building, it's like you're almost going to the principal's office, right?
Right.
So
sure.
we're trying to get real live information from people, that it's not filtered, it's not inside a bubble, those kind of things. So I think one of our 3 things was accessibility, and Darla's going to talk about one of them as well.
So Darla, what in addition to accessibility, what do you think is one of the important planks of your guys' platform?
I'm very into transparency. Like, I believe when it's an education system that involves people's children, they need to know what's going on. They need to know it in real time. And like I said before, they need to know what's happening with the policies. I am a very policy-driven person. So you say, who reads policies? I do. I read all the policies. And then I research those policies and go through the policies, and I bring them up to the school board and I say, okay, what's going on with this policy? Where does this come from? They had policies that were unconstitutional because they followed the executive orders that were unconstitutional, and we called them out as I stood up there. I called out the mask. I thought that was horrible that they were making parents put a mask on their kids' face to get an education, of which is not teaching them anything because their scores are so low. So what was the purpose of that? But I'm very much into truth. I don't hold anything back. If there is truth to be told, people have a right to know the truth, especially when it involves their children. And the innocence of children is something we as a moral society, we have to keep in the forefront of everything we do. And I will never support a policy that violates the children and that innocence in any way. So if you can think of a policy that Monroe has that violates that innocence of a child, you can be guaranteed I'm going to be against it.
And obviously this goes along with the transparency. You want to make sure that whatever policies are out there are not sort of some hidden policy. This is something that's out in the open. Now, how would you make sure that that all of the policies say that the administration folks that they put forth, how are you going to make sure that the rest of the community has access to those policies and an opportunity to be heard as to whether or not they agree or disagree with them?
I had a parent recently tell me that there is an avenue that the schools use in order to communicate with the parents on a regular basis. And why isn't that being utilized of what's happening with the Board of Education? And I agree with that 100%. If the system's already set up, let's use the current system. People can answer their email. People can get a text message. People can get as much as information as they want. And that's our plan, is to get out as much information as you would want to know in the easiest format and the way to understand it. The transparency at the meetings so that they're recorded and they're heard and they're put out there. So maybe you can't watch it Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, but Thursday night at 8 o'clock, the kids are in bed and you have a chance to go back and say, what is this school board doing today? What is their focus? I brought up issues to them. What are they doing about it? Mm-hmm. And we would like to set it up that people have more than 3 minutes. I'm telling you, I got to talk super fast to get my 3 minutes in sometime. And they make sure that I don't go 3 seconds over my 3 minutes. But looking at opening that up some and giving people more of an opportunity to be able to get their point across, because 3 minutes is a tight time frame to share what is typically with parents' emotional responses to what's happening with their children.
Right.
And we want to give them the time to be able to do that, be able to openly discuss what's going on with the discipline process. Heather Boone brought that up as she exited the school board. And that's been something that's been brought up from my understanding here for a while, is how is the disciplinary process not working? And I don't think anybody's going to say that it is working in no public schools. I had a parent recently just tell me about the bullying and how bad the bullying is at the high school. I'm not at the high school every day, so I can't tell you what it's like. But that parent told me what their child's going through, and I have no reason not to believe that. And so you say, okay, what's happening with bullying? Let's talk about it. I'm not one of those people, let's just talk about it and do nothing. I'm very action-oriented. So I'm good to talk about it, to get all the information out, but then let's move.
Yeah.
Let's move.
I think we all encourage the school board, if we were on the school board, to interact with the public.
For sure. That's things that all three of us agree on.
Yeah.
Because
sure.
if I'm going to answer a question privately, there's probably a bunch of people that like the same question answered.
Sure.
So,
Right.
if I'm on a public board and I can't speak publicly to people, then I've got a problem, right?
Right.
If you go to city council or you go to the Monroe commissioners, they engage with,
Yeah.
because they have questions. They mean, hey, let me know more about this. Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
We're not worried about the 3 minutes, okay?
Right.
As long as someone's not being abusive or repeating themselves over and over again, I'm okay. I give people a lot of rope. We don't have that many people coming to meetings.
Yeah.
So public
Yeah.
discussion time wouldn't be more than 15 to 20 minutes. So
Right.
I'd rather give people, and I think we all would, as much rope as they would
Yeah.
like to have.
We did
Now-
try to allocate extra time to each of us and pass it off, and they wouldn't allow that. But
You do
yeah.
all the time, so it wouldn't work.
You guys watch C-SPAN too
I wanted
much.
their time.
I want to reserve their time. Yeah, I pass my time over to Tom. Hey, Tom, I got to ask you now. At the break, we were talking. You had mentioned that your wife is a retired teacher, and then it dawned on me. Holy smoke! Your wife taught one of my kids in kindergarten, and so. You, like I do, have a unique perspective because your wife was an actual educator in Monroe Public, and very recently, your wife just retired, not just a few years ago, right?
About 5-6 years.
5-6 years ago,
Yeah.
but she still has. I know she still knows my wife Suzanne, and so I'm curious, like from your perspective, what do you think is an important part of your guys' platform, and how does that and how you fit all that stuff in with the teachers that work so hard in the community?
Well, as Brian said, accountability is a big thing, and what we're not seeing at the school board level is accountability for the poor performance by the students. The administration and Julie's staff, or now Mr. Shaw's staff, they gather a lot of data. There's an enormous amount of testing going on in the schools of the students, probably much more needs to be because it takes up their time when teachers could actually be teaching them.
Yeah.
So they gather all this data, but what they don't do is listen to what the teachers have to say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whether it's my wife or your wife, and my wife knows a lot of currently working teachers plus recently retired teachers, and they'll all say the same thing. We know how to make test scores and proficiencies better, but nobody's listening to us.
Yeah.
They come down, they say, you've got to use this tool, Dreambox, or you got to use this tool, iReady. And the teachers will say, I can use that, but that's not 100% what needs to happen. I need to be one-on-one with a student.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, in my opinion, is the school board itself doesn't recognize that. For the first time in probably a year, test scores were on the agenda. So, in my opinion, it should be on the agenda for the school board every month. I'm
exactly with you on that, because how else are you going to really, how else are you going to be able to tell what works and what doesn't work? It's great, okay, let's try Common Core. Let's try that. Let's see if that works when we teach math. Well, how long did we have to try that experiment before we find out that, it doesn't work? Yeah. I know. But, for crying out loud, look at the scores. Figure out it's time to change. It's time to go back to something else. It's time to talk to the teachers and find out from the teachers what they want.
They're the frontline workers.
Yeah.
They're the ones that every day are in the pits with the kids. They listen to the kids. They know what the kids' issues are. Certainly some kids learn better than others. They have different things they can do with a particular student versus another one. Let them do it.
Right.
Give them the freedom to do that. Don't handcuff them that they can only do things one way with one set of tools.
Well, right, exactly. Every kid is different. I had somebody on the show a few weeks ago, and he talked about the fact that he had dyslexia. And dyslexic students learn differently than other students. They're left brain, right brain, and he recognized that. And he recognized he was a retired school teacher from Blissfield. And my recollection was that he talking to a kid one day, and he realized, oh, you know what, this kid is left brain or right brain or whatever. And he had done the research on this. He realized that, hey, I need to teach this kid a little bit differently than I teach everybody else. But so many times it seems that everything is sent down, policy driven, and you got to do things a certain way, and that's it. There's no exceptions. We got to teach everybody the exact same way. Seems kind of foolish, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we didn't talk about a little bit is curriculum for reading, right?
Yeah.
So there are two main drivers for curriculum. It's called Lucy Calkins or Fontes and Pinnell. Lucy Calkins is not phonics driven, which we know scientifically that phonics work. That's
right.
how, but it's not driven that way.
Right.
So Monroe has been using Lucy Calkins for a little while now, and I would say that's probably why results aren't as good. My wife had the same experience in Adrian, where they had been using Calkins 4 or 5 years ago. They made a move to Fontes and Pinnell and prioritized reading, and they're seeing much different results. So once again, we spend a lot of time at board meetings, I think they'll testify, talking about how Monroe is the premier educational organization in Monroe County.
Yeah.
It's like if we keep repeating it over and over again, enough people will believe it, but that's not what's true. So let's go to other schools that are being successful, and let's dig in and find out what are they doing.
Well, I tell you
what
what.
kind of curriculum are they using? Or what are they doing differently?
Monroe should be the premier school system in Monroe County. They have the funds for it. They have some great ideas, and they have some great innovators, and I know that they have some great teachers because I'm married to one of them. And I think that you guys are the breath of fresh air that the school board needs. I love to see your guys' passion, and I wish you all the very, very, very best of luck. So thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for sharing your ideas.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You got it. All right. That is, unfortunately, all the time we have for this edition of This Is Our Town. I want to, once again, I want to thank Brian, Tom, and Darla for coming on and sharing their views, and wish them the best of luck in their campaigns here coming up in November. That is all the time we have. Going to turn it over to my good buddy Bob Vergils as he goes bobbing around Monroe. That's all we got. That's all the time we got. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Join us every Sunday at noon and Tuesday at 7 p.m. for another edition of This Is Our Town with Jeff Yorkey, a local public affairs presentation on MonroeCountyRadio.com. Brought to you by Allen Chevrolet Cadillac. All roads lead to Chevy.
This is our town, the place we call home.